Hey makeup friends, today's video is all about cream blushes. So I'm going to go through my entire cream blush collection, do swatches, and I'm going to tell you what my favorite 4 and my least favorite 4 are in my collection. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, just keep watching. So as always, I want to start off by welcoming you back to my channel, or if you are new here, then hello and welcome. My name is Kara, and on my channel, we like to mix beauty, brains, and the occasional F-bomb. Quickly, the makeup that I've got going on. There is a whole mishmash of matte shades going on the lids. They are not the star of the show though. The star of the show is this guy right here. So this is from Adept Cosmetics. It's available in a single, and it is the shade ACI 14, and she's beautiful. On my lips, I have one of the liquid lipsticks from Rare Beauty, and this is in the shade Brave. Like I said at the top, this video is going to be all about my cream blush collection. It has grown significantly over the years. I wasn't always a big fan of cream blushes. Cream blushes of yore were difficult to work with. They either were greasy on the skin, they didn't have good pigmentation, or they just didn't have any lasting power. That is not the case anymore. I have a wide variety of colors and different textures within that cream blush category. Some of them I prefer to others. We're going to get into that after the swatches, but let's just sit back and enjoy the swatches for now. All right, so now that we have seen the blushes in action, I'm going to share with you which are my 4 least favorite in no particular order. So up first is this guy from Fenty. This one is Fuego Flush and it's the orange blush. If it was a matte orange, I think I would have liked it a lot more, but because it has this really strong shimmer to it, just not a fan. There's something about this shade that I just don't find to be overly flattering on my skin. I think it needs a little bit more depth, or just something isn't quite right with it. So it's either the blush or it's just the combination of the blush and my undertone together. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it just looks off on me. And this is one of those cream blushes that I find I have to layer something on top of it in order to make it workable. Again, I think if it had just a little bit more depth and no shimmer to it, I think I would really like it, but as it stands, it's just not one that I ever reach for because I just don't like the way it looks on me. Next in my least favorite is this guy from Incredible. Now I used to really like it, so I think that time has just done a number on it. Here it is here. This one is in the shade Be My First Kiss. I like the color of it, but I just find that I think it's getting dried out. And so as I'm applying it, I find that it's starting to pill up on my skin. And then I just basically end up dragging the product back and forth and it doesn't blend out in the same way that it used to. So this product is, oh gosh, probably 2 years old at this point, if not maybe even more, dare I say. So I really think that it's just a product of time getting the better of it. If I really work, I can blend this one out, but I think it's time to let this one go because just the integrity of the product itself is gone and it doesn't blend nearly as nicely as it used to. Next we have this one here from NARS. This is in the shade Gasp and it's one of their Air Matte blushes. And there's just something, again, just one of those things that I can't quite put my finger on with this one. I think it comes down to the texture and also the shade. So this one comes out more like a putty than anything else, so it's a bit thicker in consistency, and I just find that that makes it a little bit harder to blend out. And then also the color. While I really don't mind a more brown-based blush because I find that it just looks more natural on the skin anyways, this one is just a little bit too strongly brown without any sort of warm undertone to really help to add life to the skin. I mean, I guess I can't really say it doesn't have a warm undertone to it because it does. It's just, it's not a very flattering undertone, at least not on my skin tone. And so it's just a blush that I don't tend to reach for. I also really don't like the texture of it all that much. It's too thick and it's really difficult to blend out. And because of the packaging, you can't really just go in with a brush and pick it up and apply it that way. I still have to apply it with my finger, even though I can then go in with a brush afterwards. And for just all the combinations of those reasons, it's just not a blush that I recommend. Now, finally, in my least favorite category is this one here from Tower 28. This one's in the shade Golden Hour. And whereas I was saying that I would prefer if Fuego Flush was a little bit deeper and certainly matte, this one is definitely deeper, but it's almost too deep for my skin. So again, this is just a very personal preference, but it's a strong blush. Now you can go in obviously with a lot less product and really spend your time to blend it out, and it will. There we have it. But I do find that this has a bit of stickiness to it, so blending it out initially is a little bit more tricky. Once you do get it blended out, it can look very nice on the skin, but it's just a texture and consistency that I don't really like. What I do prefer for this one over the NARS is the packaging, because I can just go in with a brush and then apply it to my skin that way. But having said that, again, that stickiness element is still there. Now, once it is blended out, that stickiness does leave. So if you can find a shade that you like and you don't mind spending the extra time to blend the product out, this might be a product that you really like. But for me, just the combination of the fussiness of the product itself and then certainly the color, even after it's blended out, I just don't find that it looks all that flattering on my skin. This one's just a no for me. So naturally, that brings us to the top 4. And again, in no particular order, let's start with Fenty again. And I'm sorry to do this because you can't actually buy this one on its own. It was part of a limited edition holiday trio set, but my God, do I ever love it. This is in the shade Fenty Glow. Fenty, you need to make this permanent because it's so beautiful. It looks like Dookie in the pan. Like, it doesn't look like anything that anybody would ever get excited about, and yet once it's applied, it's beautiful. This is such a natural looking blush once it's applied. Again, on heavy swatch, it looks a little suspicious, but you blend that out and it's beautiful. It just nails the undertone perfectly. Once I apply it, it almost looks like a little bit of like maybe a day or two after you get a little bit of a sunburn, you know, when it's starting to turn into a bit of a tan. That's the kind of color that this produces on my cheeks, and I think it just looks so healthy and fresh, and it's one of those blushes that makes me think of summer, and I just love it so much. The next one I want to share with you is one of the melting blushes from Rare Beauty, and this one's in the shade Nearly Apricot. So everything about this, I just enjoy. I like the packaging on it. It's a little bit bulky, but because it's so petite in size overall, I don't mind the extra little bit of bulkiness. I have no problem storing this in the blush holder that I have. I like the raised embossed lettering, and I even frankly like how the product just sits in the pan like that. I just like everything about this, and certainly I like the blush itself. Again, you can pick it up easily with a brush, or you can just swirl your finger in it. And I find that it applies really nicely either way. So either blend it out with a finger or again with a brush. And it just, again, it's more of like a kiss of color. It's not full, strong pigmentation. And yet it just produces this beautiful, almost lit from within kind of look on my skin. And I just think it's so beautiful. Once again, there's no shimmer in this, and it's not producing any sort of sheen on the skin, but it's got this really soft kind of matte effect where it's not a harsh, stark contrast with my skin. It just blends into my skin nicely and just looks very natural. So even when I do reach for a color that isn't anything my skin ever produces on its own, I still don't necessarily want it to look like I'm wearing makeup. The color might be a little unnatural, but I don't want the finish to look unnatural, if that makes sense. And this one achieves that. It just blends in so nicely, and you can't really see where the blush starts and your skin ends. Your skin doesn't end, that's terrifying. This one just has a way of blending in to the point where you can't tell where the blush ends and the skin begins, and I really like that. Another blush that I love is this one here from Shiseido. This one's in the shade 3, Momoko. And it's one of their minimalist whipped powder blushes. This one has a really strange texture, so it's a little bit more on the moussey side of things, almost like a jelly consistency, but not quite as wet as what those are. And yet it picks up really nicely on the finger, and it blends out really nicely as well. This one again can be built up to have very strong pigmentation, or if you blend it with your finger or a brush, it shears out really nicely. Again, it has that like cream to powder kind of feel, so there's no stickiness on the skin, and it is one of those more demi-matte kind of finishes where it's not just a flat matte, but it doesn't bring any sheen to your skin either, and that is a finish on blushes that I tend to gravitate towards. One of the most impressive things about this blush to me though is its lasting power. I can wear it first thing in the morning, and by the time I get home from work it's still looking every bit as good, and I really appreciate that in a blush because not all cream blushes are like that, especially the ones that I initially ever first tried. I'd put them on and maybe within a couple of hours you really couldn't see it anymore, and that is not the case with a lot of these blushes that I've been talking about today. Last but not least, let's talk about the blush that I'm wearing today, and that's coming from LYS, or Love Yourself Beauty. This one's in the shade Self Love, and it's this really beautiful rose kind of color. This is one of their higher standard satin matte cream blushes. This is fairly new to my collection, but already it's made a really good impression on me. This is one though where if you have a lighter skin tone, such as myself, go in with a light hand because this goes from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. Exhibit A, there's the finger swatch. It's basically the same depth of tone as it is in the pan. I can blend it out nicely though, and this is another one of those ones that blends nicely with a brush or a finger, although with this one my preference is to pat it on my cheeks with my finger and then apply it with a brush or blend it out with a brush. I find that if you just go in straight with a brush into the pan, like one tap, and go from there, because if you swirl and then apply, it's going to be Clown City pretty quickly. If that's your jam, go for it. It's not my personal aesthetic, so I've had to have a little bit of a learning curve with this, but I do find that just sort of patting it and then blending works perfectly. So there it is, sheared out, and I just think, again, it's one of those tones that this is how I look when I've exerted myself, and I just think it looks so natural on my skin. But there are other shades in this line that I am interested in, including a more peachy kind of tone that I'd like to pick up once they restock. With this blush, you're also getting a ton of product in the pan. There's 6.5 grams in here. By contrast, the Rare Beauty has 5 grams in it, the Fenty has 3, and the Tower 28 has 4.5 grams in it. So you are getting a ton of product with this blush. So while this one is new in my collection, straight out of the gate, I have fallen in love with it. And now that I have figured out that learning curve, I love it even more. So there we have it, guys. Those are the bottom 4 and the top 4 in my collection. If you have a cream blush that you love, or conversely one that you really did not get along with, I would love to hear about that in the comments below. But for now, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next video. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.